All right, welcome everybody to the CNCF Serverless Working Group, BoF, or Birds of a Feather. Basically, we don't have much of an agenda. It's really a free-form discussion for you guys to ask us questions about what we're doing in the Serverless Working Group and stuff like that. What I'd like to do as a sort of a starting point is have everybody who's a member of the working group basically introduce themselves and give their opinion in terms of why we're even here and what their purpose is in the working group, what they want to get out of it, stuff like that. If it's okay, I'd like to start off, though, with a sort of a brief introduction in terms of what I think we're doing here and how we got to where we are. About a year ago, the CNCF Technical Oversight Committee decided they wanted to do some investigation on serverless. It was still a relatively new technology, and they wanted us to figure out, or they wanted to start a working group to figure out, what it is, what is serverless, how does it relate to other technologies like function as a service or all the other ASs out there, basically what's going on in the community. And so they started up a working group to investigate that. And as a result, our working group produced a white paper and a landscape document. The white paper basically does everything I said. It lists out, what is serverless, how does it compare to FAS, PaaS, IaaS, what is a common serverless framework, what are the use cases for serverless, all the general stuff, as well as some recommendations in terms of what potentially the CNCF should do going forward. And that's really what we're going to talk about next. But the other thing we produced was a landscape document, which is pretty much just a spreadsheet of all the various technologies out there in the serverless space that are doing something with serverless. So we have open source serverless projects, proprietary serverless projects, toolkits, services that interact or relate to serverless functions, all the types of stuff. Just a dump out there so people can see what's out there. Not trying to say which one's good or bad, just what's out there for people to see it and they can start playing with them themselves. So I guess I should say my name's Doug Davis. I work for IBM. And our purpose in the working group was really to promote the idea of interoperability and portability, right? We don't want people to get locked into one particular vendor for serverless. And so our objective in the working group is to look for opportunities to create community standards around these things so that people can move their code applications from one platform to another. So if you have well-defined or proprietary event formats, proprietary function signatures, that's going to lock you into one particular platform, and we want to try to fix that so people, meaning our customers, have a choice as they move around. So that's what our point of view is in terms of this. Let me now hand it over to people in the working group and get their perspective. Let's start over there with Austin since he has the mic. Austin, stand up. You got to introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Austin Collins. In 2015, I created a popular open source project called the Serverless Framework, and then went on to found a company called Serverless Inc. We own the infamous serverless.com domain, so some of you may know that. Let's see, why are we here at the working group? That's a great question. One of our forecasts for serverless is events everywhere. We're entering this age of IoT sensors everywhere, of systems of intelligence that can make decisions in real time based on event data. And then we have serverless compute, which was previously known as AKA compute. And it's never been easier to write some code to react to something that happens. You have basically massively scalable pay-per-execution compute resources available now. So we think event-driven design, IT has been around forever, but even more so in the future is going to be incredibly important. And events are going to be coming from all types of sources and being transported across environments. So events everywhere and then functions everywhere. For a long time, we felt like everyone's going to go out and create some type of serverless compute option. And that's what we've seen. Public cloud providers all have a FAS offering. Now you have all these great serverless compute implementations on top of Kubernetes. And then people are running functions in the edge right now as well. So with functions everywhere, with event data everywhere, we think that there's definitely a need for some type of standard. Although we're not supposed to say the word standard within the CNCF. So harmonizing these serverless concepts so that what developers are focused on is simply just writing functions one way and deploying them wherever they want to deploy them, whether it's in a container, whether it's in some proprietary FAS offering, and not having to shift their focus to become platform specific, not really having to learn kind of platform quirks and all that stuff. So deploying functions everywhere. And then, of course, events. Wouldn't it be great? I mean, everybody's publishing events right now, but they're all publishing them in different formats. And this just makes the developer experience really frustrating. You have to go relearn what event format people are using. So what if event data had a consistent format or a consistent envelope? So you could always see You always know as a developer where to check for the event type, the event version. You can start putting in tracing information so you know where the event has been. Maybe you could put in security rules so you can know where the event should not go. All that stuff needs to be standardized or harmonized. And then, maybe we should look into plumbing. It's like, how do we actually start rigging up entire systems, functions and event-driven workflows and stuff, and how do we do that in a standard way? So all that stuff, I think there's plenty of opportunity for us to harmonize these concepts, and there's no better place to do that than the CNCF right now. So that's why I'm here. That's why members of our company are here. And that's it. That's me.
So I just realized as we go forward, let's do just one person from each company. You can introduce everybody, but let's just do one company. Otherwise, we're going to spend the whole time doing introductions. So, Sarah.
My name is Sarah Allen. I'm from Google. There's Rachel here, Thomas. Might come in later. So a few of us have been involved in the serverless working group because my team is building the infrastructure that creates the events that drive Google Cloud Functions. And what we're seeing is that these are used for a much wider breadth of use cases than traditional messaging products. And regular old application developers who make web applications are routinely running into the complexity of a distributed system. It's not okay anymore to just have a web application that just has your person's data. People are integrating data from all these different things. And what we're seeing is that our customers are not just using Google, right? Nobody just uses like one Google service. I mean, maybe there's some people who just need one service from Google, but these things interoperate, and more they interoperate asynchronously. And our customers are using AWS, and they're using Azure, and they're using on-prem systems, and they're complaining about like how much work it takes to just hook things up, and can't you give us a tremendous amount of documentation about how to hook up these systems and that system and that system and that system. And maybe we don't need 17 hops to go from one thing or another in 5 pieces of infrastructure. So we really see that we're doing something that's very similar to what other cloud providers are doing, and it's built upon many years of industry know-how. And so we want to participate in making things easier for our developers.
Are you in the working group? No. I know Mark is.
Hi, Mark Peak from VMware. Bernd is in the room. Alex Ellis is also here representing OpenFaz, which he's now a VMware employee, where we're funding him directly for all open source work around OpenFaz, which is a wonderful thing. Our reason for being in a serverless working group is all around the same aspects as IBM. We want portability of services, of functions across services. We want to be able to, as Sarah said, be able to have our customers be able to use any cloud, write the function once, run many. And I'd say that that's one of the areas that, as we're seeing containerization and functions come about, is where customers are having the most problems. They're trying to take their monoliths applications and convert them into containers and functions, and it's problematic. As they're writing these new functions, I really want them to be able to only have to write them once and not for once for every cloud. And so that's part of the reason that we want to look at this harmonization, be able to work with the industry, with everyone in this room, to understand how we can develop a good set of specifications to harmonize things. So.
So, 2 minutes.
Well, you get 1 minute.
Well, let me tell you about some things. So my name is Clemens Vasters. I am here with my 2 colleagues, Justin Conway and Bahram Banisadr. And we are messengers on Azure. We own a bunch of services that have to do with good old messaging, as well as new messaging. And we've built out a platform over the last 2 years, really, that is the substrate underneath the Azure platform that makes the Azure platform event-driven. And out of that effort, so now the storage team can go and emit events about things that are happening in their system. The the base platform can, so the fabric can go in emit events about, a VM haven't been deployed. All services can go and emit some events, and we make them generally available across the platform. As we saw kind of how this evolved, we made it possible for all of those teams who are pushing events into our platform to publish their own events. But to make them consumable, we defined our own base schema that they all had to adhere to, kind of an envelope format. And then they can go and put the details in. So that's something that we developed more or less as best practice. And we found a similar approach in this group, and then have more or less snapped onto this approach now that we have in the group, and are contributing in terms of the base schema ideas, as well as transport bindings. A little bit on my background, because there's also a broader story to tell, one of the things that I'm also involved in is, yes. I'm in OASIS, the chair for AMQP, or co-chair for AMQP. I've been working on the PubSub specification for OPC UA, which is in industrial. And so one of my goals for those matters is to go and bring all those things together. So for instance, that OPC UA, the industrial world, also speaks cloud events, so that we only have to worry about one format, one set of protocols. And I think once we set the baseline, we can then start looking at the verticals, like all the different storage services, they can go and talk the same way. So we're at the start of a road. We're very committed to making this all work, and looking forward to work with you all to make it a success story.
I can't remember, during the intro, did I mention cloud events? I know I talked about the serverless work group itself, but I don't think I ever mentioned cloud events, did I?
So I did.
Okay, before we keep going, because people keep talking about eventing, and some of you guys who are new to the group may not understand why. So one of the outputs of the service working group was recommendations. I know I said that. But one of the recommendations, Yaron's next, I think, was to focus on harmonization around the events that are transferred between the various components. And so we started working on this cloud event specification, which we just released version 1.0. I'm sorry, 0.1. And as Clemens alluded to, we have an HTTP and a JSON mapping defined for those. So that was our first attempt at some sort of harmonization effort, still very basic, alpha level, but please take a look at it. It is our first attempt at harmonization, but let's keep going around the room.
So real quick.
Sorry, go ahead. Yes, please,
I
interrupt
forgot to
me.
make a call out for Ben Corey from VMware, who's looking at virtual kubelet, and we should talk with him at some point about how that intersects with serverless.
Definitely.
Some very interesting things.
So Yaron, all we're doing is saying why we're in the group and where we're from. 30 seconds. Not that I know you.
And we're also behind Nucleo, which is a serverless function.
Oh, why are you in the group? What do you want to get out of the group?
Why are you involved?
I want to get interoperable APIs across different functions in different categories, eventing, signatures,
That was
etc.
beautiful. It's concise. I love it. David's in the group, and Kathy.
Hi, I'm David Lyle. I'm with Intel. Our interest is really about interoperability and portability, especially around the event model, and then trying to maybe grow support for that in a broader open source ecosystem.
Hi, my name is Kathy Zhang. I'm leading the serverless project at Huawei. I'm based in Silicon Valley. I think my goal of this is to, working this work group, is to make the developers' life easier. I think one aspect of that is to, if we can have a consistent and generic model for the user to configure its serverless application model, like to specify, the event and function and the relationship between event and function. So I think that's one aspect I'm interested in. Of course, one of that is the event, cloud events, the format. Yeah.
Let's go, since it's over here anyway, let's go to the Red Hat guys.
Hi, my name is William. I'm with Red Hat, and I think I won't repeat myself here with everyone saying the same thing about interoperability and whatnot, but that's pretty much one of our goals, and of course represent our customers here as well. I guess as we talk about events, one of the things that is still very, I'd say, undefined in serverless right now is the application model, because now you have like all these functions and all these events, but you still don't have like a well-defined, established way to package one application that is composed of like multiple functions, for example. That's one thing that I'm very interested in. Hopefully we'll get to that after we nail the eventing part.
Hi, my name is Klaus Deissner. I'm from SAP. I think I don't need to add very much. I'm also interested in interoperability, of course. I think you brought up an interesting point. So serverless is much more. It's evolving rapidly. So I'm also in the group to see where else it's heading. I mean, apart from functions and events, and so how this whole approach and architectural style may evolve.
I think Oracle's next to you.
Hi, I'm Chad Arimira from Oracle, formerly with Iron.io, and we're doing the FN project. I think a lot of what, I agree with everything that's been said so far. One thing that I'm really interested in is seeing that that serverless doesn't go from this high peak cycle down to the trough of disillusionment and stay there. Because I think there's a challenge with serverless that it hasn't really delivered on, I think, all of the promises out there right now, which is a big part of the hype. And it's really interesting to see a group of diverse companies that don't always get in the same room to talk about what the future looks like and how we can try and avoid that together. So that's a big part of the reason why I'm there.
Yeah, I hope you guys have noticed the variety of vendors here. I mean, we have pretty much almost all of the really big players represented, and that to me says a lot.
Cats and dogs living together.
Exactly. It says a lot for how much we actually want this thing to be successful. I think is really cool. I know Lee's over here. Anybody else in this working group heading that way?
Yeah, Varun. Anybody else from Oracle in here that I may not even know because we're a big company?
Yeah, but you've been introduced indirectly, haven't you? No, go ahead. Let's go to Lee first, then we'll keep moving back.
Hey guys, hey, Lee Calcode. I'm here from SolarWinds. Also, I took note of the Longhorn T-shirt over there. So I just coming from Austin, Texas. So why does SolarWinds care about this?
It's a mystery.
There's some truth to that, probably to the fact that it's a mystery. Yeah, there's a couple of reasons. I would say that we're probably generally more interested earlier on in some of our efforts there about just explaining the space, helping others understand it. As the group goes to focus on events right now and trying to formalize that spec, notice I didn't include harmonization in there, so you can thank me for that. That we, there are others that, most of the others that are represented have some kind of a dog in the fight, so to speak, or have a bit more skin in the game is maybe a better way of putting that. I would say that interoperability is certainly core to the value that SolarWinds provides or maybe benefits from to the extent that it's third party to a lot of things. We do provide some amount of monitoring for functions that folks run. We also care just to the extent that this new application design paradigm around being event-driven is becoming a thing and is catching on, is moving forward. That even as we go to run a number of SaaS products ourselves, that we're finding that just internally we've begun to use the spec as it is today and are just internally benefiting around that standard format in and amongst various teams. So there's a few reasons in there. We end up spending a lot of time in the CNCF and other working groups, as well as other standards bodies. And so, again, just sort of generally interested in helping steward where we can. So.
Is there anybody else on the working group who'd like to introduce themselves? Really? Okay. So, as I said, we don't really have much of an agenda other than that. Oh, I guess you can hold on to it because I already have a mic. So let me start right from the outset. Are there any questions you guys have about the working group in general, or about the cloud events, or what we're doing? Otherwise, I may have to start randomly picking ideas out of my head, and that's always a scary thing. Any questions so far based upon what you've heard? Oh, you guys are going to kill me. Okay. In that case, let me do. Oh, go ahead, Sarah.
What gets you excited about it? Like, if it's really an opportunity for us to hear from people who we don't talk to every week.
That was actually the very first and probably only thing on my list was what are your use cases? So thank you, Sarah.
Sure. So I'm Jamie. I work at GitHub. So some of the potential use cases that we find from serverless is chat ops. So we want to make it very easy for other internal developers to spin up ad hoc or sort of ephemeral things very quickly. That's probably the biggest one. The other one also is perhaps sort of machine learning, I think, and sort of being able to scale aggressively across our infrastructure. Those are two of the strongest use cases that we have, I think, so far.
And what are the challenges?
So I think lack of precedent right now. We haven't really seen other people do this, I'd say. So. Cool. Yeah.
Hand the mic, yeah.
So that's a really interesting one because I think when I looked at the serverless work group, when I first joined way back last year, Mark invited me. I saw this chat ops there and I'd not really thought about it. And then it connected with an idea that I had on OpenFAS. We had all of these contributors coming in on GitHub. And I wanted to give them fine-grained access permissions so that they could comment on things and then a bot could do stuff instead of giving them full write access. So you guys should fix your permissions. But I've created this bot that means I can take anyone like Panos who's sat here that's contributed to OpenFAS, give him permission to open, close issues, to merge pull requests, triage with labels. And that's all done with an OpenFAS function in Go. So it just gets JSON from GitHub, verify the HMAC. And it's really nice integration with GitHub Apps. I've taken that a step further and started a little project called OpenFAS Cloud. And the idea is that you can deploy a bunch of functions anywhere on top of OpenFAS, and then when GitHub gets a push notification, it will tell us, and you end up with a Heroku-style HTTPS endpoint with Let's Encrypt. So I think it's a super cool use case, and there's so much we could do for automation. So you should check it out. It's called Derek, and Docker is also using it on the Moby project, so it can't be bad.
Anybody else have a use case they'd like to mention? The gentleman right there, right next to you. Yeah.
Hello, I'm Panos. I work for SUSE Linux. I'm a QA engineer, and I was recently looking OpenFAS and serverless. And basically, one of the use cases is that since we have many departments, many people working in their own different clouds, many people have their own scripts doing the same thing. Using serverless basically is a way to unify, so I can access somebody else's functionality without really having to know how it works in the backend. I just have a question and I have the answer. That's it. And another second use case is we are looking into how we can use it for having really fast testing in that case for the projects. Just to give you a very quick example, I assume everybody is familiar with this web page, like is it offline or it's just me? So imagine something like, since we ship a distribution in that case, we would like to have the knowledge if our packages are installable in that case. So in case now many users are installing third-party repositories and they end up with a strange environment and they would like to know if the system is in a correct way, or if they have the problem, or if the system has the problem, then for example I'm using OpenFAS in that case, so I just send one command with a package I have trouble with, a container gets spawned in less than a second, give me the zipper log, the log of the installation, and I know in that case if it's me or if it's the system. So this is all done using serverless. It's really fast, so we're looking into like unit test or how we can have a QA basically using serverless models, how we can use it. We are exploring.
Okay. Cool. Gentleman over here.
Hi. Yeah, first regarding the serverless application sharing, AWS did the, I'm not with AWS, I do consulting. AWS had the serverless repository application thing, which is a great step. It's kind of like the same thing as Cube Apps. I think that's something that's worth looking into. Now, regarding workflows, I do consulting, and the two biggest issue I see are a lot of companies use serverless, Lambda especially, to automate infrastructure. They do smaller one-time event-related stuff or creating users and stuff like that. And they have a lot of smaller projects like this, and more often than not, they get into a huge mess of functions and no idea how to do and how to manage a large number of smaller functions that happen. We've seen, again, no precedent in this and no way to organize it, and there's still a lot of issues on that. The second use case is I've had clients who have applications that would be great as event-driven, but still, since there is no obvious or direct way to build the full application that's serverless, there are some frameworks like Chalice, which is in Python, and so forth, ZapUp, if I remember correctly. There's a lot of them, but there are still not comfortable doing a full application in serverless until there are some best practices or more documentation on this. So definitely more examples and workflows, especially around organizing functions and projects.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let me ask a question, because as I said, one of the recommendations was to produce a specification around the metadata for events, so you get some commonality there. The other thing we talked about in the working group was looking at the function signatures and trying to get some interoperability around that. I'm curious to know from people out there who are using this stuff, who actually maybe tried different platforms, are those the two high hitters for you? Are there other areas of harmonization you'd like to see us tackle or look at? Or where are your pain points when you actually try to move your code from one platform to another? Or has it not been an issue for you at all, and we're just making stuff up? Anybody want to comment on trying to port things around?
Hi, I'm Marco from Adidas. So basically, we build our data platform on AWS using just Lambdas. So basically, everything is built by events. And the data scientists they build their code, they commit, and after that is trigger all the process to create a EMR cluster, whatever, right? So the problem is that now we are looking at another second provider. Yeah, but the problem is that Lambda is written, all the Lambdas are written in Python, right? So this is standard, then Python is nothing. So we were looking into Google, for example, or other providers, but basically you miss all the underlying infrastructure. So what I was expecting that we have like kind of API calls, that if I need just a storage or an Hadoop framework, I just call an API from Python. So I have the full CI/CD tool chain prepared directly from the data scientist, and wherever is the Hadoop framework, they can just call it. Yeah. So this is really an event-driven platform. Yeah.
So it's the services that your function is going to call you want some interoperability around. What about the deployment of the service itself? Does the fact that, say, the function signature is different, is that a problem for you, or is that just a minor thing?
Yeah, no, it's a problem. It's this one as well.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Yeah, but basically, yeah, standard APIs should be the way to go.
Wait, can you take the mic? So, believe it or not, I'm actually on a Zoom call for the other people in the working group who couldn't be here, so they might be able to hear it if you use the mic.
So that sounds really interesting, the problem that you have about Python and the signature being the same everywhere. I think some of the open source projects that are represented here could solve that very easily as long as they covered the other things that you need. There's obviously just one format. You deploy Kubeless, Nucleo, OpenVAS, wherever you want. It's the same signature, right? And iron as well. So I think that could solve that problem, but there are probably things you'll miss from Lambda. But one thing I don't think you'd miss from Lambda is probably like the 60 meg binary limit. If you're doing data science, how are you even doing that with a 60 meg limit? Because as soon as I had people in the universities or in actual companies do it, they need gigs, right? 550 meg's not enough. So what are you doing about that?
Wait, give them the mic. I'm curious.
Right, or TensorFlow.
So actually, we are trying to move the data scientists to use like standard CI/CD tool chain, right? Because actually, the data scientists, they are using just simple R code. Yeah. So we are moving them to Python. This is another step that we are doing. And of course, like this limit on lambdas is something that will come. So actually, we build all the platform that is driven by lambdas, and yeah, we are looking in this issue because yes, we will have this one. So. No, not yet, because Adidas is an enterprise company, right? So we will launch our open source program this year. Yeah. So we have an approval from our board. So we will gonna to try something.
Can you get Yaron? Can you get the mic? Yeah.
Point from Alex, because our key focus around Nucleo, because we're a data platform, is around AI and machine learning. And we found that, for example, with the TensorFlow, one thing you can do, let's assume you have a model, which is many megabytes, could be even gigabytes in some cases. You could just go and put it in an S3, and every time there's a inferencing, you could load it. That's probably impractical. So what we've actually seen people doing is loading the model within the function. And that also solves a lot of data science problems around versioning of the code and the model, because now you have versioning of the model and the code as one artifact. And when you do rolling upgrade, you essentially roll upgrade the model and the code artifact together. But that's not possible with Lambda with the current limitations.
One quick comment on quotas, since that just came up with that code limit. For me, serverless is some people making decisions for you around operating the infrastructure, and also doing such in a way that it works not only for you, but it works for very many people, and then also doing so in a way that it's profitable. And so we're finding that sometimes we impose quotas that seem weird for certain customers. If you have special workloads where you need to have binaries that are several gigabytes large, then you're probably no longer a customer for a serverless workload. That can be run in a general purpose public cloud with shared infrastructure. Then you're probably more in a place where you can run something that is dedicated for you, where you can load that up, and then you can also run it in a Lambda style way. So there's options if you go to different platforms. What I think what's important is that the interfaces to those infrastructures can be the same, so that you can go and put little functions, and no matter, you don't care whether functions run, or you have a scenario where you actually control the place of deployment, but you can go and still use the same APIs, and harmonization will help with that. But the quotas are for someone who runs public cloud services at trillions of events per day. It's important to have quotas in place.
William, want to make
just two simple questions, I'd say. One first, is there anyone from AWS here? Okay, is there anyone already using or that have used Lambdas? No. Okay, just curious, is that a concern at all from the working group perspective that we don't have that big of a representation from AWS?
Has
not in this event, but
yeah.
Yeah. I'm not trying to create any FUD, but
no, AWS has been in the working group before. I can't speak to why they're not here right now.
Okay, no, not here. I guess in the working group.
Yeah, no,
oh, they are. Okay.
Yeah, they're part of the working group technically. Yeah. So we are technically we're out of time, but no one's opened the door to kick us out yet. Is it okay if we go a little longer? Okay. Yeah, Austin, or Kathy, go first since you have the mic.
I have a question. Has anyone used AWS the step function? Okay, good. I think he raised a good question. I think we need a way to organize the functions. A typical application is usually not just a simple function or simple event trigger one function. It might be a combination of events triggers a combination of functions, which can be executed in sequence or in parallel, or maybe switching. Depends on the function execution result and branch to different next function. So I think one work item we can do is to define a standard way for the user to specify the serverless application workflow, or you can say it's function workflow, which involve event function and what event trigger what functions, and then what's the next step, something like that.
Okay. So while Austin's talking, these are the serverless tracks that are on Friday. It's Friday, right? Yeah, Friday. Austin's the first one. We have a really cool demo, right?
The most ambitious demo ever.
It is the best demo ever of the cloud event specification. Almost all the major players who are in the working group have some part in the demo. It's really cool. But you want to say something else, or was that it? I'm sorry, did I steal your thunder?
No.
Okay, good. Sorry.
First off, I forgot to introduce my colleague, Mathieu. He's our lead architect on our Event Gateway product. It's a pretty awesome event router. Just routes event data to FAS on any cloud and on any serverless platform. But I want to say, great job, everyone. At the beginning of this year, we started the first effort to harmonize one of these concepts. That was cloud events. We just got the first version out. We released it like 2 weeks ago, I think.
Something like that, yeah.
I honestly think what we're doing, just standardizing that event format, is bigger, could be bigger than serverless itself. I think it's going to have a pretty big, interesting impact on IT in general. And if you don't believe me, you should watch Kelsey Hightower's talk in about an hour here. And if anyone is looking for validation of like the work that we've been doing over the past few months, check out that talk. It's going to be pretty awesome.
Right. Any last questions from the audience or areas of harmonization you'd like to see us focus on? Last one.
Hi there, Pelle from Global Scanning. I was just wondering if there's any thoughts on how serverless could work together with persistent client connections, like stuff you would do with WebSockets. I guess is there a fit or not fit, or any good solutions or thoughts?
Anybody want to take that?
So we consider all the...
Wait, give Sarah the mic so people on the Zoom can hear her.
So part of the motivation for my talk, which is at the end of the day on Friday, if people can stay that long, which is the conversion of serverless APIs in compute. When I was working on the Firebase team for about a year, and then moved over to GCP when to really broaden our focus on events. And Firebase does serverless APIs where there actually is no server code, and there's a whole set of people who are doing apps where the front end is just in the browser, right, and the back end is just APIs. And more people are using these managed services where you can, get 1 million of them for pennies or whatever, and those are really serverless APIs. So Firebase has a persistent connection between the client and server, and I'll be going over some of those use cases in my talk, as well as serverless compute ones and what I think the majority of the audience thinks of as serverless. But I consider these things really the same thing. And as you think about eventing, this kind of, under the hood, it may be WebSockets, but how you transmit events is sort of independent of the events themselves. So right now we're doing HTTP with the serverless working group, but we're going to move on to other standards as well.
And with that, I think we're technically out of time. The last thing I want to say is that, what is it? 8:20 this evening, we actually have a working group meeting here on site. If you look for it, it's called CNCF Cloud Events Working Group Face-to-Face. So you can actually see us not just sing Kumbaya like we're doing now, but actually argue a little. At 8:20 this evening, I'm not sure of the room, but you can find it on the schedule. Mark, since you got the mic, is there something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I was just going to follow on about persistent connections, which is that's an opportunity to use some of the open source FASs being able to deliver different functionality, not having to worry about limits, be able to have persistent connections wherever you need them, and not have your functions killed after 5 minutes or however long. So there is a need for being able to run open source projects such as OpenFAS, Riff, etc., Kubernetes, Nucleo, sorry, trying to get everyone in here, FN, in a way that you can now control your own destiny, even if it is running on public cloud.
All right, thank you. And weekly calls for the working group, if you're interested in joining, please do. We want as many people as possible, in particular users, not just providers. So please join the working group if you can, and thank you all very much for coming. Appreciate it.